There's no rush like gambling. Ask any better. Whether they win or lose, the brain's reward system is overloaded with dopamine, which is something all humans crave. It's a very addictive chemical, and we get the same kind of release when we get a message or notification on our cell phones. And fans are always looking for ways to immerse themselves into the game even more, with things like fantasy sports, which I personally love, or just betting on games in general. And this in part has led to the boom of the United States sports betting industry, which shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon, and will only show signs of exponential growth in the near future. Now, the word gambling tends to get a negative connotation to it, but if you're willing to look past it on its surface, it does provide many external benefits. I'm Chris Pennell, and I'm going to tell you why sports betting should be legalized across the entire United States. Casinos have already made a great impact locally, but I think the potential for sports gambling. And speaking of things that would benefit from the legalization of sports betting, state and local economies will be affected greatly, in a good way. The American Gaming Association projects that the sports betting industry will become a $41.2 billion industry annually, and a sizable portion of that will go directly to local economies and smaller communities. The American Gaming Association also projects that 19% of that $41.2 billion will go to local economies, and 53% of it will add on to the national. Now, the common concern or general perception people have of gambling is that it's just people losing money left or right, and they don't really understand how it can be benefiting them in any single way, or the government in any single way. Well, the simple answer to this is taxes, and lots of taxes, and I can speak from experience here. So, for example, I like to play on DraftKings, and once you start winning over a certain amount of threshold of money, typically around $600 in most states, they'll take around 25-26% out of each time you win. So every time I withdraw on DraftKings, the government will take out 25-26% of that money, and that money goes to tax services. So that is how the government actually benefits from people gambling, because gambling is a huge industry, and people that are winning, they take out the taxes, and those things can help. This in turn will also lead to the addition of many new job opportunities across the United States. So Thomas A. Garrett, who's a former United States representative, attorney, and professor of economics, presented a table of statistics in his paper, Casino Gaming and Local Employment Trends, that would suggest the increase in jobs with areas that added casinos. So what he did was he took 6 counties in the Midwest area and compared their unemployment rates pre and post addition of casinos. And what he found was pre-casinos, the unemployment rates in those counties were 7.53%. Once the casinos were added, those numbers dropped all the way down to 6%, with only one county not reporting a lower unemployment rate. So as you can see, the direct impact of casinos was great when it came to opening up new jobs, and I think the addition of legalizing sports betting can drop the number down even more with the population. Legalizing sports betting will also generate viewership on games that typically wouldn't get the viewership in the first place. So for example, Thursday Night Football for the NFL is pretty much known for producing the worst football games of the entire week, especially compared to the Sunday night, and Monday night football games. The games are statistically lower scoring than those games as well, considering that the players are on shorter rest, which means less time for recovery, and in football, obviously they need recovery time. And then also the matchups are usually subpar as well. But despite this, the viewership for these games are absolutely massive, just because people are tuned in to watch their fantasy players play. They're checking in on how their bets are doing, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like, I'd have no interest at all of watching a Jets versus Dolphins game, for example, two pretty bad teams. But if I have a fantasy player in that game, or if I had a bet in that game, I'm watching it from first snap to the very end, just because I have some interest on it. And that's how viewership would get increased by the legalization of sports betting, because people are going to be tuned in watching it no matter what the score is. And what I just said was mostly my own opinion, but the numbers will back this up as well. So Seth Everett, who's a sports broadcaster and contributor to Forbes magazine, suggested in his recent article that a poll from Seton Hall Sports suggests that 70% of Americans are more inclined to watch a game that they have money on the line for, which to me that makes plenty of sense. And Michael McCarthy, who is the lead writer at Front Office Sports, he's also written pieces for USA Today, The New York Times, Sports Illustrated, and many other major sports outlets, suggest that football bettors are the most loyal TV viewers for the entire NFL. They're more likely to stick around for the entire game, which means more engagement for watching commercials, which obviously the NFL would like that, just to generate more ad revenue. And they'll stick around till the very end, two teams they don't care about, because they're watching their fantasy players, they're betting on seeing if they're going to hit their spread pick, And I don't know if they're second string wide receiver in the Jets, if he gets a 40-yard catch, that could be a big boost for their fantasy team. So they're more inclined to stay around to the entire game, and I'm guilty of doing this as well. I'll watch a random game that I really would have no reason wanting to watch as a Browns fan, but since I have fantasy players on those teams, I will pretty much watch the game from opening kickoff to the last snap of the entire game. And McCarthy also mentions that people that bet on games are 63% more likely to watch pregame activities, and they're 53% more likely to gather with friends and family to watch the games. And this is a small thing, but it's also good because that means more people are watching, and if more people are watching, that means it leads to more people buying products from companies that are using commercials. And when more money is being made, products can only continually be improved for users. And the last thing I want to hit on is the importance of partnerships when it comes to the major sports books or gambling websites with the major sports leagues. So for example, right behind me in the background, we have DraftKings plastered on one of the walls in the Chicago White Sox stadium. Now, it's something small, but when fans are in the stands or even people just watching TV, if you can see it, they see DraftKings all over the wall at one of the major league teams' stadiums. That helps ensure a trust because first off, they're going to see that and they're going to be like, okay, I can trust DraftKings. My own team is supporting it, so I can trust them. I'm going to go on there. I'm going to play. And I'm not going to get scammed. It just helps ensures a trust, and it also gets people to play. And then that's more money for everybody going around and all the other stuff we talked about earlier with tax revenues and all that stuff. So this kind of thing just helps ensures a trust between fans and the big time companies, which obviously a lot of people have a hard time trusting big time companies. So when one of your favorite teams is endorsing it, it helps build that bond. So more recently, I was going to talk about the DraftKings partnership with the brand new XFL. Now, unfortunately, the XFL has now died due to the coronavirus killing their season, and they were not able to generate enough revenue to keep this going. So they did file for bankruptcy, and it looks like the league's going to be dead for quite some time. Maybe they'll come back in the near future, but as of right now, the league is no longer. But when they did have the partnership, it was pretty big time because the XFL needed people to, help them boost up their ratings and get people, interested in the sport. So DraftKings, which does daily fantasy sports, they partnered up with the XFL, and in an article by David Felicio, who's a writer on DraftKings, he said that the chief business officer of DraftKings, Ezra Kuchars, said that the XFL is an innovative, fan-first league, and DraftKings shares a mutual commitment to delivering top-notch gaming experience to sports fans across the board. And this allows DraftKings to, collaborate with the XFL to help improve fan interaction, which fan interaction with the XFL was obviously needed big time for them to survive. Unfortunately, they did not survive, but at the time, it was going well because I saw a lot of interest in XFL just because you could play daily fantasy sports on it. I feel like if fantasy sports weren't involved with the XFL, it would not have done so well. But from what I saw, there was a big following just due to fantasy sports. So I think DraftKings did a pretty good job involving themselves and making it more interactive. But unfortunately, like I said, it's no longer. And there's also William Hill, who's another sports book who ended up partnering with the NBA. So this was a big sponsorship because we know how much money the NBA brings in every single year and how popular the sports are, or how popular the sport is. But back in October of 2019, an article written by Ryan Oakes, who is the marketing manager and author at William Hill, he was able to reach out to NBA partners that were in collaboration with the gaming community, and he got a couple of quotes. So Senior Vice President and Head of Fantasy and Gaming for the NBA, Scott Kaufman-Ross, he stated that we are delighted to partner with William Hill as they grow their business throughout the United States, and they're excited to work together to provide a world-class experience to fans. This is exactly what fans want to hear. It can help ensure a better fan experience. It can also help build trust between two companies, like I was talking about when fans see DraftKings plastered on the wall. Same thing goes for when NBA fans see William Hill plastered all over the court. It helps ensure a trust, which is big time needed when it comes to big. So, sports betting is here to stay, and it's only going to grow exponentially in the future. States that have already embraced this fact have already seen benefits in their local economies and job markets as well, and fans are loving it too. They're getting more accurate data streamlined to their mobile devices as quick as possible, and it's just another way for them to get more involved into the game that they love. Gambling tends to get a bad rap, but it's better to embrace an industry that's coming on full force than it is to miss the boat completely. And we're already seeing the impact of no sports going on due to the current pandemic. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars being lost at this moment, and just plenty of jobs that aren't in service anymore, me included. But once everything clears up, I think this industry is going to be one of the main catalysts in boosting the economy back to its normal self.